computer. Recording. And now we are recording. It is Wednesday, February 28th, I think for all of us, although it's radically different parts of the day, 2018. And we are recording. This is the second session in the spring 2018 edition of the Storytelling Therapy video conference course. Okay, the agenda for today is to say a few words, if anyone wants to, about the article I mentioned, and then begin with life stories. I think even though there are 9 of us, it makes sense to for each one of us to tell our life story to the group so that we can help each other gather the additional stories. As I think we went over last week, and then I also went over with Biliana and Sumaya. The general method here is to find stories that are similar to our life experiences, and bounce off those other stories, rub against those other stories, and see what happens. So so we'll do life stories, and we have to edit ourselves, both in terms of time. It's a challenge to tell your life story in 8 to 10 minutes, and it's also a challenge to tell it without being too. Each one of us has to strike the right balance of being it's our option how much we want to talk about our relationships and our emotions. In this setting, this is a pretty open setting, especially since we're recording it. Although we're saying nobody else will see it, still, each one of us has to decide how much we want to talk about emotions and relationships. Well, really what you can do, and what we often do when we have workshops in the business world, encourage people to center their life story around: what do you love to do? What are you really good at? And what is the history of your finding and developing those special skills and talents and interests? Another way to think of it is a major newspaper has called you and they say they want to do a feature about you, your work, your life. Most of us would welcome that. I think most of us are entrepreneurs. We would welcome it. So if such an article would be written, what might be the title of it? What might be some subheadings in it? So this can be, this is the way you can think of your life story. But let's begin with a little bit of thought about that essay. Did anyone have a chance to look at it? I'm going to go to share screen.
The paper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read a part. It's a wonderful paper. I like it so much. I have liked so much.
Thank you. It's we're helping develop the field of storytelling therapy, or storytelling for healing, and it is a late bloomer, because drama therapy has been around for almost 100 years. Visual art therapy has been around for over 100 years. Of course, much longer, but in modern psychological terms, these fields really began about 100 years ago. Music therapy is there, dance movement therapy is there, and all of these different therapies use story, but only in very recent times is story and storytelling being considered a separate, standalone form of creative art therapy or expressive art therapy. And I do want to mention the community called Healing Story Alliance, which is an email group. Anyone can join it if you just Google Healing Story Alliance. Hundreds of people who work with storytelling who are also developing storytelling for healing. And Vikas, hello. Vikas, can you hear me? Vikas, looks like you're in a car on the way from the airport. Chat, I'm going to write a chat message. Dear Vikas, can you hear?
I can hear you now.
Okay, and we can hear you. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
I've just got in the car, so
that's fine.
I've just got in the car. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, it's a blessed moment. All 9 of us are here, and there were other people who wanted to join this edition of the course, but I said we cannot possibly have more than 9 windows because the windows would get too small. So I hope you're all using the gallery view.
Gallery.
Where you see 9 windows perpetually. Because if you want to choose that option, you go to the upper right corner of the window, and it either says speaker view or gallery view. And if you click on it, you'll toggle back and forth between seeing the speaker big or seeing everybody small. And I recommend the small. Okay, so let me go to share.
Eric, that is feasible on a laptop. I doubt if you can do that on a cell phone.
Okay, well, going forward, if you can attend these sessions by laptop or tablet, do try. But okay, I'm going to share screen, and let's see. I'm trying to get the essay. Just a moment. There we go. Okay, now can you see on your screen, the very top line says, in the conference proceedings?
Yes.
Is the font big enough, or should I make the font bigger?
It's great.
It's okay?
Bigger.
Okay.
A little bigger.
Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to get to the place. I'm going to go off share for a moment so I can move this window around. Stop share. Okay. And now I'm making it a little bigger. Okay, and now I'm going back to share screen. Okay, so now it's a little bigger.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a long paper. It's like 12 pages, so obviously we're not going to go over the whole thing. The opening lines, as mentioned, the time has come for storytelling therapy to take its place alongside these other expressive therapies. And I use the metaphor that storytelling therapy is like Cinderella, because it's been helping all the other therapies, but never being able to go to the ball herself. In other words, not acknowledged as a thing. And so we are in the process now of developing it so it can be acknowledged. Does anyone want to, I've chosen one paragraph to mention and discuss. Does anyone want to mention a page number or a paragraph or any part of this that they want to just mention and say it was interesting?
I have liked especially the part that say that the storytelling have healing the society. I don't know if I say correctly, but
Yes, yes, yes.
there is part.
Okay, well, as if by synchronicity, I have also, I wanted to say a few words regarding healing. And I think we even discussed it a bit last week. But my question is, what is healing? It seems literally, it refers, when we talk about the human body, it refers to flesh recovering after being cut or bruised. So the healing may involve flesh knitting itself back together, and the blood coagulating, and the flesh knitting itself, which may result in a scar. But they also say scar tissue is stronger than the original tissue in certain ways, but it's also more rigid in certain ways than the original tissue. But all of this is a metaphor for psychological emotional healing. So how can we facilitate psychological emotional healing? As was said last week, we are here to help facilitate the client's healing or development. We cannot do it. We can help our own healing, but you cannot heal somebody else. All you can do is stimulate them so that their healing kicks in. And then about therapy, it seems that talk therapy itself involves telling the story of your life. But a principle of talk therapy and really of psychoanalysis is that we revisit events. And when the events happened in the first time, it just happened to us, and many times we might have felt we were not in control. But now when we revisit them with our therapist, our guide, our mentor, now we're more in control, and we can calmly look at what happened. And then we can realize how we were shaped by what happened, and how we maybe developed coping mechanisms, maybe we developed defense mechanisms, but one way or the other, we responded to what happened. And now in therapy, we can look back at all this and decide if we want to try to change any aspect of ourselves. Would anyone else like to say anything about healing or therapy?
I would like just to add probably something. As an art therapist, we use also the word to recreate a memory. Besides revisiting and being an external observer of what happened as such, is more about recreating the actual emotional charge that, or how can I say, the emotional memory that we had in an event that happened. So through a recreation, it can be just another word added, or maybe we put a symbol that actually can help the story to be a bit lighter, let's say, or a color, of course, through the visual language, it's also a little bit different. There is a space being created which actually provides the client or the patient, the person who is being treated, to be more more in control or more in charge, and also to change maybe the traumatic experience through making it lighter in some ways. So yes. I like the word recreating. Also, we spoke with Eric the other time that for example, for the shamanic work where the storytelling also makes a big part, healing is actually an harmonization process of something which has been dissonant within a given vibration of a person, and then it's recreating a harmony within a sound, a movement, a memory, and so on. So just
yes,
to add this.
To come in a different harmony with
Yes.
with the world, the universe, the cosmos.
Yes, and it's also about agreeing that we need a dissonance part in something so that we know the harmony. Let's say within music, you need a dissonant sound so that you can actually create a movement within the music piece.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understanding through those means, it's understanding that any experience, even though it was traumatic or negatively thought about, is giving the positive result within the whole harmony.
We can put it in a new context.
Yeah.
Yes. So this corresponds to step, I think, 4 or 5 in that 7-step program I mentioned, where after we've thought about our life story and compared it to other stories, we can feel free to play, to add characters, to add scenes, and to transform the stories, transform aspect of our life stories. Does it transform us if we transform our history? It might, on some level it might. I think I've mentioned to some of you, and some of you know about this form of storytelling therapy called narrative therapy, which especially focuses on helping the client recognize and celebrate her coping mechanisms, her survival mechanisms, her mechanisms for resilience, for bouncing back, and to be aware of that and to be able to use it again. And I was very happy the other day. I also came across the term, in addition to narrative therapy, transformative narrative therapy. And that, I think, Biljana, is what you're referring to, and it's certainly what I'm referring to. And really, Carl Jung, the psychologist, he is a foundational thinker in this whole field, because he also, recommended this method of comparing your experience to myth and folk tales, fairy tales, and then experimenting, making new stories, and especially going into the stories and speaking as the characters and speaking to the characters. That is the real emotional part and the real fantasy part, which I don't know how much we'll actually do here in the group, because that is that's very deep work. And we're in this situation, it's more of a training situation and a classroom situation. You may you may want to do some of this role-playing work, just like 2 or 3 of you can meet privately and do it by Zoom or by any other method, or you can do it with people wherever you live. But the step of role-playing, these characters that you remember or that you've created, that's where things really get real on an emotional level. Okay, anybody else? Does anyone else want to refer to any other aspect of this article? Or, of course we can pick up on it later, but does anyone else want to say anything right now?
Just one tiny point. Biljana, you were talking about a symbol, and I think, Eric, you've mentioned using symbols as well. I think where you were talking about it, Eric, you were talking archetype. Biljana, what do you use?
I use both things. I mean, anything symbolic, if you go deeper down, is in touch with an archetype. But if we talk about within a storytelling and how I use in my therapy, symbology can be anything from a key to universal symbols, to what is a cross or a circle, if it's something abstract, or a crown, for example, if it's, I'm talking symbology like this, in that sense.
Thank you.
So, yeah, you're welcome.
I think in general, I like the idea that we should always look for the context when thinking about symbols. You know, it depends on the life story of the client. It depends on the story that's being told. We cannot say that something always represents a particular thing. Freud would. What is said about Freud is that if a thing is longer than it's wide, it represents a penis, according to Freud.
I just wanted to say something. Just to ask also everyone, perhaps, for example, within my work, what I'm accompanying or helping people is actually to find or to decipherate their own vocabulary of what symbols mean to them, and also besides the collective meaning and consciousness, and also to understand maybe how they are talking with their subconsciousness through those symbols. So I don't know if that is also relevant in some way or another within the storytelling.
Sure.
I think it is.
For example, I was working with someone some time ago, and a mobile telephone came up again and again in her life. That she used the mobile telephone to change to a different school. She used it to especially in terms of developing professional contacts and professional opportunities. And of course, we use it for social connections. But she was in a situation, she was physically isolated, but the mobile telephone enabled her to reach out and interact and set up many opportunities for her. So that mobile phone, maybe it represents that for everybody. But for her especially, as a woman, in a particular family setting where she was not permitted to travel by herself, the mobile phone represented what? Freedom, growth, independence.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead? Go ahead.
I have liked so much the part that talk about take the voice, they take the character voice to tell stories. I think it's this is have a very strong effect to take the character voice. I like it. So
you mean to speak as the character, and even sometimes to let the character tell her, to let her tell her story instead of us telling her story. We can speak. It's said in the first person. So I am Cinderella. Let me tell you what happened to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In this story work, sometimes we externalize. That would, if something is internal, like our own personal experience, we can externalize it by saying it happened to somebody else. We can project it onto an external character. Likewise, we can take any story about an external figure and say, this happened to me. I am Sita. Let me tell you what happened to me. I'm Draupadi. I am Joan of Arc. Let me tell you what happened to me. So when we do that, we internalize things that were external. So we're externalizing the inside and internalizing the outside. It's a way of I don't know what we're mixing things up.
Yeah.
Eric, I just would want to add something here. This is with reference to I have undergone a session with Eric years back, and this is one thing which stood out or which stayed with me was when he told us as a group about how you can separate yourself from a situation by by telling a story from a third person's perspective. I think that's what he said here. and I since, as I told you, my I kind of acted out or mimicked or voiced as the character, and I tried doing this during the storytelling session, and I think I kind of I just didn't get through. And so I actually want to understand, how does this work? I want to know how this works, because it didn't work with me.
How does what work?
When you, as you said, you take as a third person, you stand apart from your own story and tell it like a third person. And
Yeah,
you just
so
said that
first person is I did this, I did that. So then
Yes.
to make it into third person is I will say he did this, he did that, but it's really about me, but I've externalized it onto an external character. So yes, tell again, what is your question about that?
So when we were in the process of the storytelling session, I didn't connect with this.
Hmm.
So I don't really understand if it works. That's my plain question, because that's something which I don't. Maybe I should try it during these sessions, because
Yeah.
to tell a story from a third person, from standing apart, and talking about oneself as a separate identity, it didn't work for me. So I just want to know, does it work? I'm just asking everyone about this. Does it work? It didn't work with me.
It didn't work in what sense? You did emotionally?
You yourself said it. You were not. You said it was not. It was not giving the same impact as the how I did in the first person.
Mm-hmm.
You said that yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think in general we all take a story more seriously if it happened to us, or even if we're saying it happened to me. If it happened to somebody else, that's long ago and far away, and it's less immediate. But you get different feelings and ideas about a story when you change when you tell it in these different ways. So okay.
I'll try it out.
Very good.
I would say I'm not convinced, but I'll try it.
Very good. Okay, and one way to try it is when you tell your life story, or if you write your life story. I hope everyone will keep a journal. You might write a 1 or 2 page version of your life story, and then go over it and underline the most interesting parts of it. And then maybe to tell just that one episode, or write out that one episode. And with both of these stories, the entire life story and a especially interesting episode, you might try then telling it or writing it in third person. That it happened to, I always want to tell that it happened to a young man, because somehow I still see myself as a young man, even though I'm old. And see, when you do put it into third person, it also sort of opens the door and gives one permission to make other changes, because you're no longer tied to telling the truth about what happened to you. You can add
Eric,
things.
changes to what? Sorry, changes to what?
What you can add changes. You can add characters. You can add episodes. You can have characters doing something in your fantasy that they did not do in real life. When you take something that happened to you and turn it into it happened to him, you've begun changing it and putting it into a different. It's no longer just about you, so it sort of opens the door, if you feel like it, to transform it in any other way.
I think that also talks about what Bilyana said about recreating your experience. I think I relate that to what
yes,
you said.
Jung, and especially Joseph Campbell, who was a student of Jung and a popularizer of Jung's ideas, would talk about living mythically. I just want to bring this in here because I've been thinking about it lately. Living mythically, which means one part of us is in the simple everyday life we're in, But another part of us is in the realm of imagination, of dream, of myth, and we are imagining what it would be like to be Superman, or Batman, or Joan of Arc, or Durga, or choose the divine figure of your choice. And it's not a matter of believing in those divine figures, but it's a matter of feeling and imagining and pretending that one is there. So it seems there's a certain value of living mythically in the sense of developing and being aware of the part of us that is our imagination, our mind is in some other realm than our basic, simple, physical, ordinary situation. So I think this work that we're doing, it will help us live mythically, and it will help our clients also live mythically. Stories are models. So if we embrace any model, it will influence us. It will flavor our experience. Did someone want to add something? No?
No, it's more of I'm just trying to understand rather than add. Am I audible?
Yes.
I just want to understand here. So you what you're saying here right now is that when a person is able to add something to a situation like a fantasy, etc., the healing process has already begun because the person has already started understanding that there is always a way out in the scenario. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now there was this situation. I wasn't an active participant in this, but I was there, and it was a situation wherein there was this. We were working with young boys who were into drugs, and they were now in the recreational path, whatever you call it, the reforming school. So in that, one of the boy, he started saying that he wanted to feel like Superman, and that's the reason why he went into the whole process, and so he wants to be in the fantasy world by doing the act. So what do you do for such a thing? Because I didn't at that time, I was just an observer of the scenario, but as a therapist, what could you do?
Well, was it having a negative effect on him, do you feel?
He was into drugs because when he started it in school, people promised him that he would be, like Superman, he could fly, and that's how he experienced the feeling of being able to fly by getting into drugs, by taking the drug. Now, what about, how do you handle this? When you say fantasy is a path to healing, how do you handle this particular scenario is my question.
Well, there's the saying that our head might be in the clouds, but we need to keep our feet on the ground, which means that we have to always keep an eye on our physical health and integrate things so that we don't destroy ourselves as we explore other things. Did somebody else want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. I think one of the things, just an idea with what Smita was saying is that, probably in that case, we also need to remind the child as to why Superman took up to flying and what were the things he did when he was flying. And it wasn't about he going and finding marijuana and hash and getting himself stoned. So that's one. So we could role play out the good things Superman did and maybe that perspective. Second thing, I want to share my experience about symbolism and about recreation. And thank you, Biliana, for bringing that in. It's so wonderful. I didn't share the best rapport with my family for very many years, and I lost my father at a very early childhood. Sorry. So a couple of years back, I wanted to rebond with them. And I would talk in the third person saying, hey, Vikas, and I would take myself to different places. And then one day I took myself to this jungle where I was a wolf and I was the protector of the family. And magically that helped me to rebuild my connections with my mother and my brother and my sister-in-law. and I was so overwhelmed by it. It was magical for me. So what I actually did was I wanted to preserve that symbol. So I got a huge mandala wolf tattoo done on my arm, and that's my symbol. That's my anchor, and that is such a strong anchor for me today. And I bless that symbol for me. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that's exactly what I did with talking in third person, recreating, and then coming up with a symbol that meant something for me, which may mean cunning and sly for the rest of the world.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Very
Vikas.
interesting.
Really, very interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for sharing that.
Mita,
Pleasure.
I would like to maybe just add something a little bit if there is enough time.
Sure.
I work in a clinic for addictions. Not full time, but enough time. I've been also myself experimenting things through psychotropic plants because of the shamanic work I'm doing. So just as an addition, from my experience, people who, and especially young children or adolescents who are into drugs, especially, obviously that depends on the cultural background, where they are. India is a very different place than what's going on now in Europe. But for me, as an experience, I think lately our modern world does not invest or invite young people to really express themselves authentically, and not only authentically, to find expressions of those dimensions which are not only a day-to-day life. So taking drugs kind of makes us available to have an inner journey and an outer journey within a world which exists. In the shamanic work, all the worlds are coexisting. So there is a multiple level and dimensions, and all of them are important. But in order to bring it back to the three-dimensional body reality, we need to manifest it and express it in some way. So the idea, I think, through storytelling therapy or generally expressive therapies is to give, or not even therapy, just to help people to be more creative and use their expression creatively so that they can use their capacities as a Superman, means somebody has a really big talent to do good things in the world and to help out. So to accompany a child or adolescent in this way is to help that person understand where his or her talents are and potentials are, to make the best of him or her during the day. Maybe through creation, maybe through a hug, through whatever it is. So I think it's just boosting up the creativity. A lot of people are, at least in Europe, are lacking this. And the taking drugs is, many of those people are actually very sensitive, and they don't know how to express their sensitivity in a world that is overflown through medias, through a lot of other things that are not helping us being authentic anymore. So this is, for example, a problem in the Western world a lot.
Beautifully said. And, growing and healing and becoming more authentic, it is often a messy process. It's not about sitting down and staying in line and being quiet. It is about searching and experimenting and sometimes making a mess. So, and then cleaning it up. So we have to be tolerant of mess sometimes, and hopefully we don't make too big a mess, and when we don't damage ourselves too seriously. But there's no set road for it on the journey to one's authentic self. There are many different ways. Okay, let's begin with a life story, because I can see for all 9 of us to give our life stories, it's going to take at least today's session and 2 more, maybe more than that. Who is ready? Who would like to tell the first life story? And what I'm going to do after 8 minutes, I'm going to, I don't have a bell, but I'm going to pretend that I'm ringing a bell after 8 minutes, and then you'll have 2 more minutes to complete. Fine. Okay, Lavanya, was that a volunteer?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to take you to a day that a few years back, where I was having all the files in my hand and trying to lock the door to my apartment. I was very frantic because I was taking the first interview in my life. I'm an electrical and electronics engineer who got married immediately after my college. But I think I wanted to do an engineering degree because it came from my father, who wanted me to be a very independent girl, handling things myself, being smart. And I was the first female engineer in the family. So he was very proud to make me an engineer. But that day, I was very frantic because I was taking up my first interview and I was running to the cab that was waiting downstairs. I had my father-in-law inside the cab. He was coming to give me moral support. I was holding my project book, trying to draw all the circuit diagrams in the air, trying to revise whatever I had done 8 years back. So the 8 years, there was no touch to whatever I had studied and whatever I had done in my engineering degree. And all through the cab, I was trying to figure out, remember whatever I had done. And the cab went to a halt, a very big, huge building. And I was taken to the reception. It was an MNC, a multinational company. And the receptionist was very nice, the HR. She immediately got into a conversation with me and then with my grandfather, who was an engineer, and he had so many patents to his credit. And she quietly asked me to go to the boardroom, where she said that there'll be a person soon coming to take up my interview. And I was there in the boardroom, a very huge one at that, an oval table with about 30 chairs. And I was, in spite of the centralized AC, I was very nervous and I was sweating. After a few moments, there was this nice, young, handsome guy who walked in with a nice, warm smile. And after some initial introductions, he just looked at me and he casually said, so can you draw me a DC motor circuit? And that was the time I actually cursed my stars for taking up that interview, because I had no clue how to draw the DC motor circuit. He was trying to help me, being very nice, trying to tell me where I should add what element to make the DC motor circuit complete, but it just didn't work. I don't know where I got the strength from to just look at him and say that, sir, I'm really sorry for having wasted your time. I really don't think I can do this. And he was very nice, sweet enough to say, yes, I understand. And he shook hands with me and said, a very best of luck to you. And he walked away. At that moment, I was just thinking about my dad, who used to always tell me that it was Ohm's law that saved him. My dad was a physics major. And after he passed out of his college, he went on to attend his first interview, where the only question that was asked to him was, what is Ohm's law? And he wasn't able to answer that, and he ended up failing the interview. But he went on to become what he always wanted to become, an entrepreneur, and he's a very successful entrepreneur now. I went back home with my father-in-law, who was very happy after having a nice chat with the HR. And I didn't talk through the entire, drive in the car, because I was very frustrated with myself as to what I'm going to do, or where my life is leading me to. But I think I just slept through it. And the next day morning, I called up my dad, who was very eager to know what has happened, because he was the person who was looking forward to me being a very independent woman, handling my life on my own. And I just called him and I said, Appa, Ohm's law saved you. DC motor circuit saved me. He just asked me, what are you telling? And I said, yes, because I wanted to do teaching. Because the whole of that night, I remember the days when I used to teach children, teach my, my brothers and sisters and all the other friends. And it's people had always told me that teaching comes very naturally to you, and probably I thought that was what I should be doing. And that is when I went in to teach in a school, started working with children, and that is where I started using stories, because I, as a child, was always taught through stories by my grandfather. I think it came naturally to me to use stories in teaching, and the school recognized it. The children were very responsive. They went home and told the stories instead of telling what was taught, and then came back to the concept that was taught, and it all suddenly fell in place for me. And when I had to take a break after a few years for my second child, I thought, why not, explore more on this, and that is how Talescope was born. That's my organization, and it's been 4 years since I gave a name to what I had been doing, but I think there was no looking back after that. So I call this story of mine as a closed circuit, because it is a closed circuit where the current keeps flowing without any hindrance. So thanks for being an audience to listen to what I had to say. So that's about me.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, sometimes when we say the story of your life, we're thinking it will begin, I was born in such and such a place, and here I am today, and in the future I hope to do such and such. But you did it differently, which is wonderful. You chose a particular moment along the way.
That's right.
With that job interview, which could have been a gateway into a career as a electrical engineer,
That's
which you had undergone training for. But that gateway, that door didn't open. And you're saying you're glad it didn't open. It didn't open for a reason. And so
Yes.
it led you to open another door.
That's right.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, anybody, on this life story?
I can try. But is it okay if I wrote yesterday my star life, and I'm so insecure to tell without consult to see my paper. Is it okay if I see and tell?
No, you're asking to read it from the paper? I would. Are you asking? What are you asking? To read it from the paper?
Yes.
I would prefer at least first to just tell us. Maybe after you finish, you can look at the paper and go over the notes. But try to look at us and just tell us from your heart. How do you begin the story? I think you should. Is the sound coming on your headphones, or it's coming from the speaker? You can hear my voice now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Please don't use the paper at first. Just tell us, look at us, and tell us the story of your life.
Okay. I was born as my mother's 50th daughter, and my father's first daughter. Both my father and my mother have had a lot of financial difficulties in their lives, and when I was so young, my father and my mother have separated. They want to go away together, and my childhood is where was with I didn't live with my parents together, and it was a very hard childhood for me, because I have saw and lived many violent situations, and the best moment in my childhood is when I have lived with my grandmother, because with her I couldn't have a routine. I so early have take responsibility about to take care of my home with my grandfather too. When I was 7, I took care of my house. I cleaned my dresses, but with my grandmother, I have had a routine, and I have a sense of security that if I do what she asked me, I have security of violence. And in all the time, all the period, I have kept touch with my father. He always has affectionate with me, and he has my how to say, my, in Portuguese we say Porto Seguro, a security island. I think it's safety island. My father has been my safety island. And when I was 11 years old, I have lived with him, with my father, and I could be more freedom and happy, but he couldn't to stay at home for the day, and I have been alone, and I have felt that I need more time with my mother, but this I never can have. I couldn't have ever. 11, and my father has got marriage when I was 14 years, and his wife did a lot of confusion in our home, in our house, and so because this I have lived. I have went to live alone with 70 years, and I started to work. After I start the university, and have kept the contact with my father. Sometimes he has helped in my financial difficulties to pay the university. And when I was 20 years, I met a man that I get married.
Okay, we have 2 minutes to go.
Okay, so I have this relationship. I have 2 children. I had 2 children, and sometimes I want to take other to other way, and in the moment I finish this relationship, I start other way to me, and I start to study yoga and work with stories and to build my way with stories. And today I am married again, and I am happy with this, and I am happy so much with my experience of my motherhood. And today I am more together with my mother. I don't want that she gives me things, but I want only to stay with her and enjoy her presence. And is it
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, okay, the first thing that I heard there was that your father has been a source of safety and security for you.
Yes.
And that helped to affirm your existence and give you strength.
Yes.
I want to use the metaphor that he was a guiding star. You know that expression, that somebody can be our guiding star. Even in the dark at night, we can navigate, we can see where we're going because there's a light coming from a star.
But today I recognize that my mother is a so strong woman, and I have, this is the gift he gave to me.
Yes, and it was wonderful that you've gotten close to your mother, but it sounds, what I'm hearing is that when you were young, your mother was not really available.
Yes.
And that is a very, very important thing for a child, that the mother should be available physically and emotionally. You know, I think the relationship with the mother for a baby, a young child, it's so important for the development of the self of the child. And if we don't have a mother available during that stage of our lives, we have to really work hard to develop that sense of self and that relationship. So it's wonderful that you were able to keep things together, and that now you are enjoying your own experience of motherhood. In a sense, you are redoing the mother-child relationship in a more a positive, happy way for your own child. You're giving your own children the connection with the mother that you did not have fully.
Yes.
And then and it's so wonderful that even now you are in communicating with your own mother. So yours is a story. What I'm hearing is a story of you held on, and you were strong, you were brave, and you managed to work through these situations. Anybody else want to add anything? Your response to Sumaya's story?
Couldn't you understand what
Yes, we understood.
Okay.
I think what I also picked up is it was a very touching story, Sumaya. Thank you for sharing that. And I also picked up the fact that your father was a strength, an island of strength for you. So whenever you and I think a lot of what you're doing today with your children is probably the same strength that you're getting from your father, and that is beautiful. And it is also wonderful the way you have rebuilt your relationship with your mother, probably because of your own experience of reliving the relationship as a mother. So that's very, very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
What you say make me remember that story I listened that our parents give us the gold ball and pass the gold ball to our children. I think
Yes,
I think my father gave me a gold ball, and now I am passing this for my children.
Yes, you are. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Your story is reminding me of a healing story. The culmination of this storytelling therapy process is to help the person create a new story, an inspirational story, a healing story for oneself. And the last batch of this class, one of the people in the class worked with someone, and that person, tragically, she did not have a chance to get close to her mother. This is the client of my student. The client was not able to spend time with her mother. Her mother actually passed away. So the story that the client made up was, to me, it was about compensating for that loss of the mother. And the way that she compensated in the story was that it focused on a rabbit, a white rabbit. And the rabbit was coming and hopping, and then some ladies came who said they were from the land of the rabbit, or they were from the society of the rabbit. They were the rabbit ladies, and they were healers, and they were midwives. Actually, they came on a ship, and they invited this young woman, the daughter, who had lost her mother. These ladies came and invited the young lady to join them on a ship. They would go on a voyage, and they would come back, but they would teach the young woman the arts of healing and midwifery, and also the moon was involved. She saw the white rabbit also in the moon. And there was some reference, in certain cultures, some ancient cultures, a rabbit was the animal of a goddess. And this was also part of the story, that that these ladies who were priestesses of the rabbit goddess, and they communicated with the moon. They were healers, and so finding this community of nature, of women, of healers, and the moon, this somehow I think helped the client to connect with the universe and get something from the universe that she could not get from her individual mother in her own life. You see? So I just mentioned that I'm going to write an article about that story, because I feel it was a classic healing story in this new field of storytelling for healing. Anyone else? We're about to close the session, and
Eric?
Yes.
Sid here.
Yes.
Actually would like to talk about what Somaya had said and even what Lavanya was talking about. I don't know, when Somaya was talking about her story, for some reason, the imagery that I was running with, that beautiful story that she narrated, the imagery that kept coming back was that of the tempest in the high seas. And the movie Moana, if you have seen the movie called Moana, which is about this girl from the village trying to save Mother Earth or the nature, and the image that turned as she continued the story is the struggle and learning about compassion, learning about resilience to come to a beautiful island towards the end. That's how the imagery that kept coming back again and again as Somaya spoke about her story, and it was very beautiful and touching. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, the word that came to my mind for Somaya's the early part of your story, Somaya, was turbulence. There was a lot of turbulence, but somehow you managed to keep steady and work through it. But Sid, did you also refer to Lavanya's story?
Yeah, to Lavanya, I had a different thought process that ran into my mind. The story that she spoke about was, if I were to put these words that I wrote down, as a struggle of emotion, struggle of trying to remember what she did and learned 8 years back, a failure, and a blessing in disguise. So these three came into my mind as I kept hearing her. Was a struggle, a failure, and blessing in disguise.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have recorded this session. I'm going to stop the recording. Let me stop the recording now, but then we'll just say a few words before we disconnect. Let's see. Stop